Greetings to everyone. I am Arunveer Kaur, a student of 10th Lily, and today I'll be discussing with you some physical properties of metals and non-metals. So firstly, what are metals? If we talk in the scientific language, metals are nothing else but elements of periodic table. Metals are the elements which have extra ions, or we can say they lose ions to become stable. All metals are solid except mercury, which is a liquid metal at room temperature. Now, let's discuss physical properties of metals. Firstly, metals conduct heat and electricity. Silver is the best conductor of heat, or we can say it has the highest thermal conductivity. Here we have exception. Lead is a metal which is poorest conductor of heat. Mercury is also poor conductor of heat. If we talk about electricity, then silver metal is also a best conductor of electricity. It is followed by gold, aluminium, tungsten. Here the exception is iron and mercury. So the next property of metals is that metals are ductile. It means that metals can be drawn into thin wires. Gold and silver are the best ductile metals. For example, 100 milligrams of silver can be drawn into 200-meter long wire. Thirdly, metals are malleable. It means metals can be beaten into thin sheets without being broken. Gold and silver are the best malleable metals. Aluminium and copper are also very malleable metals. The next property of metals is that metals are lustrous, or we can say shiny. For example, gold, silver, copper are very shiny metals. The luster of metals makes them useful in making jewelry. Fifthly, metals are generally hard. For example, iron, aluminium, copper are very hard metals, but sodium and potassium are not comparatively hard. These both are soft metals. Sixth point is metals are usually strong. They have high tensile strength. It means that metals can hold large weights without being broken. For example, iron is very strong. It is used in constructions of bridges, railways, etc. But again, sodium and potassium are not very strong. Metals have high melting and boiling point. This is the seventh property. For example, iron melts at 1535 degrees Celsius. Copper melts at 1083 degrees Celsius. However, there are some exceptions. For example, sodium and potassium have less than 100 degrees Celsius boiling and melting points. And gallium metal has very low melting point. It starts to melt in our hand. And the next property of metals is they have high density. For example, iron metal has density of 7.8 gram per centimeter cube, which is quite high. Sodium and potassium have low density. And the next point is metals are sonorous. Due to this property, they are used for making bells and some musical instrument because they produce a ringing sound. So, let's now discuss some properties of non-metals. Firstly, what are non-metals? Non-metals are totally different from metals. Non-metals gain electrons to achieve noble gas configuration. All the non-metals are solids or gases except bromine, which is liquid at room temperature. So now let's discuss some physical properties of non-metals. Here the point to be noted is that the properties of non-metals are totally opposite from that of metals. The first property is non-metals are not malleable. This means that non-metals cannot be beaten into thin sheets. For example, sulfur and phosphorus, they break easily. The next point is non-metals are not ductile. Yes, these can't be drawn into wires. They are easily snapped on stretching. For example, sulfur and phosphorus. Thirdly, non-metals are bad conductors of heat and electricity. Many of them are in fact insulators. An exception. Diamond is a non-metal and it is good conductor of heat. Graphite is also a non-metal, but it is also a good conductor of electricity. Graphite is even used in dry cells as electrodes. The next point is non-metals have dull appearance. This means they are not shiny. There is an exception. Iodine is a shiny non-metal. Fifth property is non-metals are soft. We can cut them easily. In fact, only one non-metal, that is a diamond, is very hard. Diamond is in fact the hardest non-metal. Sixth property of non-metals is that they have low tensile strength. This means non-metals cannot hold large weights without being broken. And the next property of non-metals is they have comparatively low melting and boiling points. For example, sulfur, it melts at 119 degrees Celsius temperature. Only one non-metal, graphite, has very high melting point of 3700 degrees Celsius. The next property of non-metals is that they have low densities. This means non-metals are light substances. For example, sulfur, it has density of 2 gram per centimeter cube. Only iodine is a non-metal with high density. The next point is non-metals are non-sonorous. This means they do not make ringing sound. So now let's compare metals and non-metals. Let's do a quick revision. So firstly, metals are good conductor of heat and electricity, whereas non-metals are bad conductors of heat and electricity. Secondly, metals are malleable and ductile, whereas non-metals are brittle. They are neither malleable nor ductile. Metals are shiny, but non-metals are not shiny. Metals are solid at room temperature. Yes, there are some exceptions too, but non-metals are solid liquid gases at room temperature. And the fifth point is metals are hard and strong, whereas non-metals are weak and soft. Metals are sonorous, but non-metals are not sonorous. So that was all about metals and non-metals. Thank you. Have a nice day.